the program. So I will keep it informal. I think that's fine with you. All right. So what you see here is that I saw that conference's name was International Conference on Futuristic Aspects of that. So I thought that maybe the title slide could begin talking about something that we all understand is an area, fairly common thing that we do, but how it is likely to shape in the time to come. What are the challenges, both research challenges and otherwise? What are the psychological challenges that we do have? And are there certain ways in which we could benefit from all of these if we are appropriately educated? And if time permits, the second example I will take from yet another area. So there are just two examples depending upon the time that I may have. We will pick or leave something. Okay. So just consider a conference room where you are all there for meeting, right? It may be from different people from different organizations or within the same organization, does not matter. If this room or environment has to be such that it is aware of what about the meeting is, who are all shall be attending it, what are the privilege levels or authorization levels to the information with respect to their own rights to view and use, which documents are there that they should have access to while presenting, discussing anything, and what are the things that they alone should see or know, right? But others, unless they explicitly so allow, should not. Similarly, as the discussion progresses, it is possible that something which was not originally intended to be in the list of the documents which was to be discussed or presented in the conference, it is possible a question comes and a related document is elsewhere. Traditionally, what happens, either you have to begin searching for your memory. If you recollect things, you talk about it. What about the system identifies and retrieves that from wherever it is in your authorized set of documents or presentations or a spreadsheet or whatever, and gets it for you to support you. That to highlighting the specific point that you need to probably talk about or present. This needs the environment of the room to be context aware. Context is of two kinds here. One, context which is a group context, that is the context of the overall meeting. Right? Just like this conference has a context, right? It's a common context, but individual contexts also are there, and there is an intersection. It is that intersection which is public, rest of this is private. Right? There are certain things it is possible two organizations are negotiating, and one of them does have something of strategic value and importance. They don't want that strategy to be known to others. So just because everyone is in the same conference does not mean that a strategic document should be seen or accessible without explicit consent of the presenter to anyone else. Obviously, what it means is that apart from the common presentation device and anything being presented on a shared screen or multiple screens, any devices that the persons may have using the bring your own device concept, BYOD as it is called, your respective devices are synchronized with the relevant context and content. Similarly, if there is any public information which is relevant, which should be brought to the notice while discussion is being built on, because of what is going on, right? The system should be able to support the speaker or anybody who wants to argue against it about the things that he or she has to talk about or would like to talk about. Choice is, of course, of the human being. What does it mean? So, one thing is very clear. It has visual context. It has non-visual context. It listens, right? And based on what it listens, it might retrieve, present in the way you wish. At the same time, it should not be able to access anything or present anything which one or more members of the same meeting should not be able to see or use. So that's exactly the next point. We'll wait. May I continue? So, what shall it take to make it happen? First and foremost, it needs to know if you play one role or more than one role. For example, I may be a teacher, I may be a researcher, I may be probably holding a leadership position, and I might also be one of the members of one of the clubs on campus. I might have an interest in one sport, maybe as a player, in another sport, probably just enjoy watching that, right? Different contexts, different things. At the same time, it is possible that one of us, or in that case, does need to be reminded about a medical. So that means a medicine reminder also comes into place without letting others know that you probably are being reminded, right? It is possible that you receive a call which the system should be able to find in the meantime whether it is important for you to take or whether it should simply send a voicemail or an answering text automatically on your behalf to someone else, or whether it is from somebody in some context which must be picked up. And if so, it's not reaching. All right. Is it okay? If you are not able to hear me, please raise your hand. Not a problem. So what the simple point is, if we are 20 people in a conference, we will have 20 some personalized information which is supposed to be to me, right? And even if I own a device and authorize it to have and store and that information, not be shared with anybody, then I may have certain other kinds of information which is shared between people of my, say, 4 deans department. We talk together as a part of the company whom we are program. Now, people have its own set of shared content to, in a similar way, have their own, right? Plus, common context is that we know that agenda points and things which are shared for everyone to see. These are not confidential, but rest of the things are confidential. So, what is private? I like someone, I adore someone, I hate someone, I trust someone. It's something private to me, right? But if I set a question paper, which is probably to be shared 3 days later in a particular classroom for a set of students, that is not private, it is confidential. Confidentiality is necessarily an agreement. Many times it may have timelines fixed, may have conditions fixed, who all till that time can have access to that is decided as per that formal or informal agreement. And then as soon as those conditions are met, things are declassified, they are no longer confidential. Privacy has no necessary agreement of that kind. Unfortunately or fortunately, we often confuse privacy with confidentiality. Think about it. My health information is private to me. That's what I think. Can any medical doctor treat me if I don't share that information? No. Now, if that medical doctor is an employee of probably a large hospital, he or she is bound to the information system of the hospital. And as a result, my information, which was supposed to be private, is not only known to that medical doctor, but also to some specific set of people allowed to see, store, edit, modify, append, comment in that system, whichever. That means some lab reports which could be there if I am admitted over there, or right, could get added, treatments, right? And moreover, all of these are indirectly also connected sometimes to their billing system, right? So what should ideally happen? For each one of the things that I need support for, there should be an agreement, right? Do we do it? Often not. So many things are written and we are always in a hurry because whenever we go in for care, they already have all of those medical legal things ready. We just sign on the dotted line. Technically, what we are doing is that we are agreeing to share all of that. And moreover, if you have a medical or health insurance, those guys, in order to support you, would need access to that. What is the impact of that? Next time, they could change or add to your premium. Right? Remember, this data, if allowed to be seen without anonymization and without removing the linking or binding associated with that, will hurt you if you go to another medical insurance provider, health insurance provider tomorrow, right? Of course, you are not supposed to hide information, but you may not want to reveal all individual elements of your data. You might tell about the ailments from when you did suffer so that they get a broad idea. But you don't have to submit all your reports, all your data, all of those kind of things, right? So any breach of this is confidentiality breach. But anything that between doctor and you talk, if that gets revealed to another person without your express permission, that is breach of privacy. Your confidentiality was between you and the hospital that they signed, and hospital and the insurance company, right? So there are those different aspects. They cannot share without explicit permission. It's another thing they might share. Those of us who are aware of Cambridge Analytica case, right? Many of you might have seen in those days that platforms like Facebook had connections and people wanted to know about themselves, whether they're conservative, they're liberal or what kind. So people played around thinking it will generate an opinion or tell them who they are, what they wanted to see about themselves. And all this data was collected and shared by Facebook with Cambridge Analytica. Why? Most of us did not look into with whom the data will be shared, and the details did not exist around that time, which is being enforced these days. That didn't quite exist that time. Right? So that is how Cambridge Analytica scandal came out. So anyway, if in the conference that we are having in this room, suddenly we find that there is a new information which has been hidden, which is very critical for us to take. Consider a situation when a company which is in talk with you has hidden the information that they are simultaneously in discussion with 4 other universities. Right? Ideally, ethics dictates they may not tell you the names of the universities, but they could probably tell you they are looking to examine proposals that they are having about whatever program they want or research project they want with multiple other organizations, right? Most of the time they will not. How do you find, if you find out because of some social media post that somebody mentioned that, okay, so and so company visited, had good discussion on research, right? It's all connected, internet is all connected. Is there a way There could be a back-end career service which gets that additional contextual information and makes available to the team which is negotiating with those guys. It will empower them to change their strategy if the need be. Right? They don't need with whom else, but they at least will get an information. Many of us make one very big mistake, and that creates safety issue. We write sometimes without realizing that we are being geotagged, unless we have disabled that, without realizing that there might be many people who are not necessarily our friends, who are watching what we are posting depending upon the rights we have given, etc. That we are living for this, from this airport to this, we'll visit this with family. Now, a guy who has to probably steal something from your house and knows whole family is going on a vacation, right, for so many days, also knows the timelines. Can plan out. It's another thing. It's a different story that most of the people would not necessarily do that, but there have been instances where it has been done. Right? So when I talk about these things, privacy, confidentiality, integrity, security, and protection, all things put together come together, but we cannot ignore safety. So I talked about challenges and issues involved, but question is, are we prepared? And what are the implications to understand them? And are we ready to handle them such that mitigation happens of whatever concerns we have? So I remember we had posted an article somewhere and we got a response, no, I am very worried this will breach my privacy. Right? Very valid concern. I just exchange information that, okay, what do you mean? What are the things that you think will be kind of creating a problem for you? Said, no. I want to see the body language of a person. Also, not just the information about the privacy. Yes, privacy is my concern. But even in a real physical meeting, I get to see how a person is looking at, how his body language is. And that also helps me in choice of language, tone, pitch. Everything conveys something which is not explicitly told. And I make a decision based on that. This is one Asia Pacific CEO of a very large multinational who wrote to me that. I said, okay, I use it as the feedback. Why? Because he had valid points. He was making a decision and he was not just talking about the conference which will involve 2 or more parties. He was talking about a conference in the same room where his own people might be there, his own officers, his own colleagues, but they might be talking about certain possibilities and he might want to make a sense of how much to trust, how much to give weight, it's so on and so forth, right? We know that in any meeting, if you send the complete documents to people, and students would readily understand that if a teacher sends usually any additional course material to them and expects them before the next class that they have read it and come, a very small percentage of students actually do read that. It too happens even amongst the grown-ups. Don't worry, you are not the only ones. If before a meeting, we send detailed set of documents to people, even if you give them 15 days time to read, a good percentage of people do not read. What happens as a result? They begin asking questions which have been already answered in the document because they have not read it. Right? It delays the meeting time because you will not shut a person up, right? Or saying him impolitely, you haven't read it. But it helps anybody, whosoever he says, the person who is defending or explaining, if he or she says direct citation of that, you could very politely say, would you mind taking a look at 4.2 on page number this? The document is with you. The person will be forced to take a look, right? And some of the things would probably slow down in terms of the undue questions which come. At the same time, if the person has a point, he has read it or she has read it or even not read but making a valid point, right? How the system can help. I'm coming to technology a little later. I'm knowingly starting with the concerns that we may have. What do you think, students? How the system can react? By the way, which are the technologies involved if you talk of technology itself? Did you notice if a system is observing who all are coming, you might have certain biometric ways of authenticating them without their necessarily putting their fingerprint or without their necessarily standing in front of a face recognition or iris recognition system or something like that. Right? So some kind of biometric authentication without its being very visible might be a part of it. Okay. That's one part. So that is how the room knows. All authorized people who are supposed to know, they are there. It will also know if there is somebody unauthorized who came along, somebody who was authorized is there, but it will not know who the person is. Right? Because that's not a pre-registered person. But what is the technology involved apart from authentication technology? Obviously authorization. What you are authorized to see. Right? I'm talking to students here for that particular part because I can see good number of students here. Being a teacher, it's very natural for us to talk to them. So, but when I speak, when I'm asking a question, what is the technology in use? Natural language recognition, right? That includes speech recognition. Different people could use maybe one or two languages in a typical meeting, right? Say in this part of the world where we are here, mostly English and maybe sometimes Hindi might be spoken, right? System should know which is the language being spoken by somebody, what is the context, and based on the context, derive the meaning. Which technology will allow this? Apart from the recognition part, where you get to know the textual element as converted, so you have speech to text recognition. That needs further correction so that you do not get the words which were not spoken, which requires training, right, or learning over there. And you also need text to speech conversion in some cases. Suppose somebody is deaf and dumb. On his device or her device, you would expect what? The textual overlay on the device has a tablet on that of what is being spoken, and whatever he or she wants to speak and types in or just scribbles on the note, that needs to be recognized and converted into appropriate text if it is being scribbled. If it is being typed in, that is already a text. So text to speech generation, synthesis is involved, right? There are other things, of course, over there. And those of you who know, I am sure because of being ICFAISE Tech, you would know that voice XML is one of the technologies that has been for a very, very long time, which helps you in this. Now we have also heard about language models in this context, right? When you talk to the systems and systems talk back to you or help you, you prompt the systems with the appropriate human language entries and the system appropriately is not always correct, but it does. One of the things which people do in computer science, they did in very, very early days was something they called brute force method. At a time when algorithms were not very evolved, right? But as people became more intelligent, they realized they don't need necessarily to do exhaustive things. They can use certain simple methods, some approximate methods, some randomized things, and a set of techniques to cut down both the search space and also give with less resource utilization, faster response. This is the time we are all in. Large language models, what they are trying here is to use very, very costly, exhaustive, such as brute force, almost near brute force methods, to be able to support the languages with millions of parameters to understand. And then they are trying to do something. Difference between the OpenAI's approach and DeepSeek's approach is precisely that part. Forget the media hype. Simple things first. English language, how many of you know, typically in standard dictionary, which is issued by Oxford dictionaries, how many words are there on an average? Almost near about 8 lakh. How many we use often? Not more than 40 to 60,000. This is the trick. I think rest of this you can understand. If for a particular context, for a particular set of people, you are going to design a language model, it need not be that exhaustive one. You can very easily live with smaller language models. It's a limited context. Yes, it will not recognize all 8 lakh, but then you often do not use it. Find out your 40,000, her 60,000, somebody else's 40,000, another maximum 80,000. Whatever be that. What is the near about? Much lesser than still it will be then what 8 lakh words could have required. Right? So if that is the case, we know search space itself is smaller. Now your strategies will make it further optimized. So whether a small device or using lesser GPUs at the back end, you can get better results at lower cost. Whether it will scale is the problem. That is where even DeepSeek has yet not proven it. DeepSeek, whether it will scale, is yet to be seen. But what does it tell us? We don't have to necessarily copy. If in Indian context you wish to work on those, you rather think about what others are doing. You might wish to take a look at what is the benefit of each of the approaches. When which approach indeed does not make sense for you to consider, and whether you should use so much computing power, because it will require billions and trillions of rupees to invest if you wish to do what OpenAI and some others did. So if you notice what OpenAI did, they involved many companies, including Microsoft and others, right? To do whatever they did. Earlier it was not for profit, now it has become for profit. Meta on the other side got Llama, its own thing, because it was a cash-rich company at that point in time. But each LLM has its own purpose. That gives you another good point. Why not consider, first of all, which set of words for which language, in which context, say medical doctors talking to one another, will require a different vocabulary. They will not require necessarily something which somebody who is probably a dramatist, who needs to know the local dialects and their words over and above the whole language basic part will. So depending upon the purpose, you can have optimization of various kinds. Context-driven optimization, right? Reduce number of words that you need, and choose the words depending upon the context automatically, so that search space reduces, and you can do better job with less computing power. I do not know whether you are aware. I am sure you are. We all talk about environment. Do we realize wrong use or without thinking use of very large machine learning and deep learning things actually cause huge amount of pollution indirectly? They require energy, all GPUs and all of that whatever we use, right? More we use, more energy required, right? Most of the energy is not the clean energy that is coming from still. So you are actually losing carbon credits, right? So direct and indirect costs happen. Anyway, when we are talking of mitigating the concern, one simple way of cost-effective mitigating concern is knowing the context and define it. And based on the context, have a shorter set of things to do. Are you aware that SLM is already something which is fairly common? LLMs are more famous. SLMs or small language models were later thought because of precisely the smaller device capabilities, which are your edge devices, your smartphone, maybe your smartwatch, right? Those kind of devices, some implantable devices like pacemaker and other things which could be there. So, or some wearable devices over and above those. Because those edge devices has lesser capability, you needed anyway something that they could also do locally, right? large part of learning is happening at back end. Something is being done. Can we do something in the interim, at the intermediate level? Can we do something? I hope with the examples that I gave you of how to limit context, how to reduce the set of things that you will like to work and interpret, you can see there is a possibility. For every purpose, if purpose means what? Context, right? You have this. But there is another angle to the whole thing which we have not looked into. I indicated it, but we may not have looked into. Think about a different situation. Not these people who are taking leadership decisions, but a set of artists, designers, discussing with a creative advertising team something. Many times they will say something, they will show something, they will sketch something, they will talk about the context, and the team arrive at some of the takeaways before it ends, even if the final outcome is not decided right there. What does it mean? Other than spoken and textual language, we need visual languages also to be understood, and that is here another research direction is taking place. MIT has had a group which was led by Dr. Sandy Pentland, who has just moved to Stanford in their HCI group. They call it connection science. If you search the internet for MIT connection science, you will see a beautiful set of work that they have done at MIT Media Lab under that. There are quite a few papers and other things. I think we talked about this, whether you need privacy or confidentiality. The answer is you need both. In a real life system that is context aware. And why context aware? Because you want customization. Remember in the old days, when many of you may not have been born, but some of us were there. So when internet browsers became initially popular, there was something called cookies. You still use them, by the way. What are cookies? Nothing but small plain text files. Nothing encrypted, nothing. No big deal. That is stored right in your system, in a subdirectory, accessible to the application or user agent or browser, whichever be that point, for their access. Why? They just help you to see customized thing so that you don't have to tell the system once again that these are the things you did, these are the things you liked. They're all stored locally without burdening the server at the back end. Right? So the moment you agreed to cookies, you compromised your privacy of usage. Because you preferred customized, you meant for you, therefore you chose to share that. And the moment you did that, is now confidentiality. Acceptance and agreement, though not so explicitly told, between the developer, the system, and you, the user. If any cookie goes to any server other than the server where it is connected from, called origin server, it is considered a safety risk or security risk, depending upon whatever terminology you use. Right? So we never allow third-party cookies, number one. We never allow cookies which will be originating from one server, but will be sent to another server. Right? So on and so forth. So both can go together. When we do need to focus depends upon what we do. That's it. How many of us read end user license agreements? Very few. So far in my entire career, I have never read the whole thing. It is so long and meant not to be read, just the way legal guys or insurance guys do. How much time? Okay, I will just take the second example and close it. Because we are talking about what the future will hold. I am going to start with some thoughts, but also show what already is done. And then where we are moving. I mean, I take particular example in case. This is what we are working at right now. A small research group that I am leading along with certain small groups of people around the world. We are working on this particular thing. It is in early stage, so I wouldn't make big claims. So this is a trustworthy hybrid intelligence system for sports, variety of things, for coaching, for training of other kinds, for rehabilitation if you get a kind of hurt, right? Or you get operated for some sports related injuries. So post injury rehabilitation and biomechanics inputs for correcting some of the things or your postures, all of these are included. So I will not talk more about this, but I will rather take you to this. This exists. On the internet, if you find some of the references I have given, right? If you search them, you will find more. So, why I took coaching? Simple reason. The good part of technology is keeping humans a part of whatever they do so that control remains with the humans. Ethics you can enforce, right? Anything which can do something can do good and bad things. If you put human in loop, you have better ways to do. So quite a few things of intelligence can still not be replicated that humans do with the machines. They are still far away. So all coaches are human beings, right? But these coaches could be assisted by some of these data. Think about a runner, right? Marathon runner, for example, vis-a-vis somebody who will have a sprint for 400 meters, right? Techniques required, methods, stamina, duration, right? Postures, fitness level, all will vary, right? So coaches know that, and when they are training people, some people have natural talent, but still they are coached so that improves. So this is to support coaches, support those who counsel, because sometimes you prepare very hard, do very well, right? But you fail. Suddenly your spirits could go down. So mental and physical health of a sports person is as important as anything else, right? So both aspects being covered over here. So the data comes through multiple embedded sensors which you may not necessarily see here. But I will show you, one of the slides will even show that. So many types of sports are there. I'm ignoring that part. Are you looking into the way there are some black bands, right? On the right side figure, right? There is also a black something over here, or chest. Always not going to be visible. Sometimes they might be part of your inner wear. Sometimes they might be visible outside, right? They might be even in your over there, and where they will get energy from if they are in your shoes. If we run, normal run, up to 60 watts of power can be generated by your shoes, which can in turn power your devices, right? When we breathe, anywhere between 0.few watts to single digit wattage is possible to be generated depending upon the breathing style and the pattern, and so on and so forth. This we all know. I will not talk about it because 10 minutes is this. I believe this will give you an idea. These all exist today, right? And Sensoria, if you see, is one of the sports technology companies which already has quite a few of these products in use.